Okay, good evening, everybody. Good evening, and welcome to our Q&A call for tonight. And sorry, I'm running a little bit late, 12 minutes to be exact, but I still expect to get you out of here in about 30 minutes or less. And what I want to talk about tonight is some strategies that you can use to get to your goals. And I'm sure that, since the beginning of the year has already happened, you've already set those goals. And so you probably don't have any problems there. There are some things that when it comes to anything that you're doing online that you really do need to kind of think through because what we do is not tangible. Some of these things are going to make sense to you probably right out of the bat, and then other things you may not have heard before. So let's go ahead and get into this. So let's talk about the starting point. Again, I mean, you've probably decided on some kind of income goal. So whatever your goal is online, you probably have broken that down into something that you understand in a monetary number. Maybe it's a monthly number, maybe it's a yearly number, maybe it's some kind of retirement number. You probably already have that number in mind. If you don't have that number in mind, I'm going to suggest that you do quantify, and I'll get to that here in a minute. Maybe you decide on something that your income needs to do. Maybe you've got to take care of you've got to take care of a parent, you've got to get somebody through school, you've got to do something, but you still want to kind of quantify that number before you can start setting some goals in the way I'm going to be talking about here tonight. Um, and regardless, there's some things you're going to be doing that are going to be specific to digital marketing, right? And the things I'm going to talk about here tonight are going to help your brain to focus on getting what you want in your digital business. And so, and again, some of this you're going to recognize from all kinds of goal setting, but some of these things are really going to be specifically what we maybe call it internet marketing, maybe you call it information marketing, maybe you call it maybe you're a digital marketer, maybe you're an author, right? It really is going to be the same thing. And these are not going to be mystical. So I'm not going to be talking about anything that's going to be magic or something that's going to be a kind of airy fairy or something that's just going to be kind of out there. This is going to be really common sense and then some extensions of that common sense into what we do every day. Again, if you've not decided on some kind of monetary goal, you're going to want to come up with one. And so trying to think about what kind of dollar amount that you really do want to make. And again, please don't think that I'm being trite with this, and I'm sort of getting into I guess maybe the multi-level marketing area. I'm not, and I'm not here to try to sell you anything on this. So I want you to kind of put that to the side, but I really do want you to try to quantify what you're doing. And again, that's whether or not you visualize it or any of that stuff. Just get a number that you really do want to shoot for and that really is necessary that you shoot for. That's really realistic that you can actually get to with something that you're going to be doing on a daily basis. Get that number in mind. Now, I can see your comments here in the, I can hear your comments here in the area, and so I'm going to be able to follow you. I'm going to be able to follow your comments. So if you have any questions here, please feel free to go ahead and ask them. Okay, so I think I can see. I think I can see the. I can see the chat. Okay, so again, decide on some kind of monetary goal. Um, Even if your goal is going to be something like this, I want to put my kids through college, or I want to pay down debt. Quantify that number. Go ahead and figure out what that number is exactly, and then because that's really going to really bring it back down into the kind of stuff you've got to do every day in order to get to what it is. Now, I'm going to tell you some things you know already, so just kind of bear with me when it comes to that monetary goal. Now, um, make sure the goal is going to be time bound. And that's almost kind of difficult for us to do, but we really do need to do it because again, really, it's not really going to kind of get us in the motion. It's not going to get us into focus. Again, I know you know this. I have to say that anyway. And again, I have to say this even because I did this for a long time. I had some very good specific goals, and I just kind of refused to make them time bound. And that really does kind of set the goal process aside. It doesn't set it in motion and allows you to prioritize other things over that goal that you're trying to get to inside of your business. And you can end up sitting at your computer for hours, not necessarily accomplishing those goals, mainly because you don't necessarily want to make it time bound. Typically, it's because, well, we don't really not really sure if we're going to be able to do it. It's not going to be set in stone. It doesn't mean we're not guaranteed to get it. So we feel a little sheepish about saying, okay, I want to do this in 3 years. But you really do have to do that. You really do have to say, okay, you know what? I want this to happen in 3 years, even if you can if you can make it happen in 2 years. Now, break that goal down into the smallest denomination that you can. What do I mean by that? So in other words, if you're saying that you want to get to, I don't know, you want to get to $50,000, you want to do that, you want to make 50,000 extra dollars, you want to do that over the next 5 years. Break that all the way down to what that means in terms of a daily number, right? So just do a little division, right? Let's say it's $50,000. You want to do that over the next 5 years. That's $10,000 a year. Then break that $10,000 a year down by 365 days. And then you have a daily number. If you can, try to get that. Now, I don't think you need to go down to hourly, right? I don't think that's necessary. But I do think if you can, try to get that number down into a daily number. And that really does help your focus. That really is going to help you in the exercise I'm going to suggest you do for the rest of this calendar year. Again, daily is best if you can. Then do something to put it in front of you. And again, I know that we like digital things, and I know we have a lot of convenience items. We have smartphones and all this other stuff. This is going to be a case where you really do, I think, need to have it handwritten. Again, something that I know you've heard, something that I know you know, but please go ahead and write it on something and stick it on something. Stick it on your computer, stick it on your desk, make it the first thing you look at in the morning. Doesn't really matter, but make sure it's physical and make sure it's handwritten. And even if you go ahead and you put it on a smartphone, try to get it onto something that you really do have, and you really are looking at it, because again, it has to be real. So don't make it something that's really it's just kind of an exercise. I'm just going to kind of do this, see if it works. No, you want to be say, you know what, this is what I need to do. I want to generate X number of dollars in the next 3 years, and I want to make sure that it's going to break down into X dollars per day. Right? Get it down into a daily number. Again, all this is standard goal achievement stuff, and you've heard this before. It's pretty commonly taught, but in case it isn't, in case you haven't applied it to your digital business, apply it to this. Apply it to it today. So now here's the thing. So how do we translate all of this standard goal achievement stuff into what we do as digital business, right? How do we translate it into a digital business? Now, here's that probably something that you may have known, but you may not have processed, and you may not have done it when it comes to your digital business. And most of us are really good, and some of us can really kind of come to what that number needs to be, but we don't necessarily know then what to do next. And this is going to be the most important part of what I'm going to be talking about. In a digital business, it's going to be hard to predict what's going to work and what's not. You and I already know that. You're going to get an information product. You're going to decide, okay, you know what? I'm going to do this one thing, and then I'm going to make this amount of money. It's going to be my goal. But then maybe we get into it and it doesn't do what we thought it was going to do, or we can't make it work when others can, right? So we understand that. Some things are going to be hard to make work. We can't predict what's going to work and what isn't. And one of the gentlemen that I follow, his name is Ben Settle. He's a copywriter. Um, he basically said you and I need to focus on the inputs, not the outputs, because focusing on the outcome can drive us absolutely batty, right? And you've probably seen that in your business. You probably said, you know what? I want to get to $50 a day in my online business. And you know what? And for whatever reason, we try a method, it doesn't happen. Then we move on to something else. We try a method, it doesn't happen. We move on to something else. And again, what that does is it sort of makes us schizophrenic, and it sort of makes us it makes it so that we are subject, I guess, susceptible to being marketed to, right? We are then open then to somebody saying this is going to work. And as I'm going to tell you later, the point isn't whether or not a method is solid and whether or not a method works. All methods typically work. The question is, which one can you and I make work in the time frame that we want to make it happen, so that we're doing it and that we can get comfortable with it based on our own gifts, based on our own strengths, based on the people that we have, based on the resources that we have. Now, much of what you're doing in this process is going to be testing. And this is why you and I do have to go through this process. There's no getting around the fact that there's some stuff you're going to have to fiddle with it until you can figure out how you can make it work. And this is the part that a lot of us, myself included, we don't like doing because number one, it goes too slow. Number two, other people are really flying. What happens is you get on social media, you see somebody, they're making a gazillion dollars doing something that you were in a few days ago or you were in last week, and you think, well, man, why didn't I make this work? My thing is moving too slow. I'm going to hop on to the next thing that comes along because I don't want to miss the boat. Right. And that is absolutely what we cannot do. What we have to do is we've got to keep testing and we've got to keep fiddling with the method we're on until we make it work. Now, so here's the thinking process. You and I have to figure out how much effort we need to put in to get to a specific goal. Right now, again, that sounds elementary, but it's not. It's the thing that drives most of us, that keeps most of us from really moving forward on an issue. How much effort do I need to put in to get to a specific goal? And there's no way to figure this out until you get in it and you start working with it to try it, to figure out if it's going to work for you. Now, effort, and again, this is important. It doesn't mean that it doesn't mean the amount of time you're going to spend. When you're at this stage and you've already set your monetary goal, you're going to have to kind of put on your big boy pants or your big girl pants, and you're going to have to say, you know what? It's not going to be based on how much time I spend. So you cannot get to this goal by saying, I'm going to do this 2 hours a night. I'm going to make sure I put in 15 minutes a day. I'm going to put, and you're not at that point yet, right? There is a point at which you get to that point, but when you're trying to figure out how much effort you got to put in, you cannot say, I'm only going to put in 2 hours, because I almost guarantee you will not persevere to work through the method long enough in order to figure out what you can make work. Right. So you have to go through this point. You have to kind of figure out how much effort it's going to take you. Listen, you and I can work on the very same thing. There are going to be some things that you can work on that's going to take you 15 minutes, going to take me an hour. You're going to work on some things going to take you 30 minutes every day. It's going to take somebody else 3 weeks. So you can't say, I'm going to spend 30 minutes a day until I get it. Doesn't work like that when you're at this stage. Now, the other thing is effort's going to mean what you have to produce in order to get something happen. That's what I mean by effort. So in other words, what do you have to do? What do you have to produce in order to get the method to work? Whatever you're doing. For example, and this is an example. This is not the example. It's an example so that we can think through what we're talking about. And I want you to be able to visualize what I'm saying, because I want to walk through this as an example. Let's say you are looking to increase the size of your list. You want to increase the size, the number of names and email addresses that you have inside of your autoresponder. You want to increase that number in this calendar year. So how do we determine what we have to put in order to get to that number? So let's say that you've gone out, and here's something in and of itself. When you set a goal like that, here's what you do. You stop looking at what's being launched and you go out and get what you need in order to figure out what this is, right? So again, I want to say that again. Once you decide your goal is going to be a certain number of leads or a certain number of things you got to have, you then have to go and start buying what you need in order to get to that. So in other words, let's assume that you've purchased some information products and you've decided on a method you're going to work. You study, you purchase some coaching, and you've decided that what you're going to do to get those leads is you're going to produce videos with a description, tags, optimized title, and relevant content. That's going to be your method to get the goal, right? So again, you have to make a decision about that, and maybe that's your decision. Whatever your decision is, you've got to then start to work on that thing until you get it. Now, I still want to kind of get to how this is going to help you to goal set. Um, let's say that the rest of the method or someone else you studied, you've indicated that, okay, once I create these videos, then I've got to share them on social media on an everyday basis. So that's the method. So in order for me to generate leads, I've determined based on everything I've studied, based on everything I've bought, based on all the coaching I've had, I've determined that what I have to do is I've got to produce videos and I've got to produce them and I've got to share them on all the social media networks on a daily basis. That's what I got to figure out how to do. And your study figures out or indicates that you got to respond to comments on your videos every day. Right. So again, this is what you've got to put in order to get to the number of leads you have. And again, you're doing this based on something that you have taken or you study. It's the course. Now we're still not at the point of figuring out whether or not it's going to work, but we do know that this is what you got to do. So you've got to get down into figuring out first what you have to do to get to the goal, not what you have to do. Right. Don't leave it open. What do I have to do to get to the goal that I have set, which is going to give me the number that I want, right? In other words, so again, the inputs happen at what do I have to put in to get to the number that I need to get to on a daily basis. Now, and so again, we're talking about generating leads, right? Let's say, and quite honestly, this kind of method really is not that unrealistic, by the way, right? I want to say that. So this might sound like a lot of activity, but it's not really a lot right now. So once we determine what we've got to do, how do we determine what the inputs are going to be and how does that translate into goal setting in our digital business? Okay, let's assume again that we want to grow our list by 2,400 by the end of this year, right? That's what we want to have. We want to make sure that our list is going to be 2,400 more names by the end of this year. Again, we've quantified that because we figured out, look, if I can get to 2,400 leads, I'm going to be able to make my income goal pretty easily if I can do that. So let's assume that that's our goal. We want to grow our list by 2,400 by the end of the year. So what does that mean? That means you're going to have to generate 200 leads every single month. Right? That also means then that you're going to have to generate between 6 and 7 leads every day. So now, so here's where we're going to be testing, right? We've got to determine what we need to put into our videos to get those 6 or 7 leads, right? You got to get your method to match your goal. You got to make your method match your goal. So how do I get my activity to get to the number of leads that I want? And again, this is going to be the hard part, but it's the part you have to do. Now, again, I'm not saying you're going to achieve it right off the bat, but you're going to figure out that when you start down this path, it's going to make you amazingly focused. You're going to be focused like a laser on your goal. Now, you and I then need to set the input goal that we want to complete on average at least one optimized video every day. So listen, this is the guessing game. So here's what we start with. We're going to start with this point. And again, it's basically a hypothesis. So here's what I've said. I've said I got to get between 6 and 7 leads every day. So I'm going to guess that I've got to go through my optimized video process. I've got to put up on average at least 1 per day or at least 7 per week. That's my test. That's what I'm saying I've got to put in. So I'm going to start my goals. I'm going to start my goal achievement. I'm going to start my inputs at that point. Now, again, I understand it might take more than that. It might take less than that. But you might be right at the number that you got to do. But you've got to start somewhere. And the place you've got to say is, okay, you know what? I learned this method. I got to replicate this 7 times. in a week. I've got to replicate this once a day in order for me to get to my goal of 6 to 7 leads every day. Right now, and again, we're also said, remember, we've also got to have this video promoted on all the social networks before the week is over. Right. So again, so that's part of the goal too. So it's not just that we created the video, we've got to have it promoted. So again, this is our example. Okay. So and again, and I want to say this parenthetically. This is the question that people most ask in groups, or they submit most, and it is an unanswerable question. I want you to know that when you say, or when you ask the question, okay, well, you know what? How many videos I'm going to have to create in order to get this to work? No one can answer that, right? And you have to just kind of go through this process. If you don't go through this process, you will not find out the answer to that question. Anybody can tell you something. Somebody could say, well, I do 3 or 4 every day, but that doesn't mean anything to me, right? Because maybe that person has been creating videos for 10 years. Maybe that person is a videographer. Maybe that person has somebody working for them. Maybe they've got a kid at home doing videos for them. You know what? There's so many variables. What I'm saying to you is, don't ask that question before you get in and test it. If you decide on a method, start working the method using your hypothesis as the starting point. You have to start there, even if it doesn't give you what you want. Now, again, if we're using video creation as an example, it really does depend on what kind of video we create. It depends on how I do the optimization. Right? Maybe I don't write a whole lot. Maybe you write 500 words. Again, it depends on how you do it. So you have to go through how you're going to do it, and then you've got to test your results before you determine how you're going to set your input goal. But you start with your hypothesis based on what you want to do. Now, you've got to see, right, if doing 7 videos your way leads to you getting your goal. It's really that simple, right? This is how you answer your own question. You have to determine if you're doing videos your way, right, or your interpretation of the method is going to lead you to your goal. There's no other way around that. If it doesn't lead to your goal, then you've got to seek out some help, right? Or you've got to buy something else in order to figure that out. Now, again, please don't sit around and get marketed to apart from your goal. And I think we talked about this before. I have no problem with you buying everything under the sun that comes out, as long as it's going to be focused on your goal, right? As long as it's going to be focused on your goal. So again, buy the things that are going to be, again, you should be spending everything, right? I'm definitely not saying that you shouldn't be spending. I'm not saying you ought to get off of every marketer's list. That has nothing to do with anything. You can get off of every marketer's list and be extremely unfocused as ever. You can get on everybody's list and be unfocused. But again, whether you're not, whether you're looking to get marketed to, you've got to start looking who's going to be able to help me to accomplish figuring out what I need to put in to make my videos, in this case, work. Again, you should not be looking to pick up instruction or applications that are launched just because they're launched. Right. So again, please, just because somebody's launching an instruction on something totally unrelated, right? Don't pick it up just because they launched it or because you're going to miss out on the launch price. Don't pick up an application just because you're going to miss out on the launch price if it's not focused on this goal. It has to be specifically this goal. And again, if somebody happens to be releasing something that is exactly focused on this goal, while you're in it, while you're working on it, while you're struggling with it, by all means, get it. If not, you've got to make sure you've got the resources to go and get it, even if it's at full price. Right now, you should be looking to pick up instruction or applications that are proven to help you to figure out how to get to this goal. And again, now in this case, the example we're using is how to create optimized videos. You've got to figure out something that's going to work for you so you can figure out how to create optimized videos. Again, you keep focused on your goal, not away from the goal. And a lot of us, again, myself included, we get off the track because we think, well, man, oh, this is really cool. Maybe this kind of fits. And more often than not, it doesn't. It fits in a tangential sort of way, but it needs to fit exactly on top of what you're working on and what you're struggling with. Now, once you do that, you're going to have to adjust your inputs based on what you need to get the number of outcomes that you get. What do I mean by that? If your method is the problem, you got to fix it. But you don't move on till you figure out what your method is, what's wrong with your method. And this is the hard part, and this is the part that takes discipline. Don't move on until you figure out what's wrong with your method. Keep working on that issue until you figure out what's wrong with your method. If it's that you're not creating enough videos, maybe 7 isn't enough. Don't move on until you figure out how many videos it's going to take. And again, you're going to be tempted by other things. And if it's not working as fast as you need it, or if it's not working at all, you're going to be tempted to move on to something else when you don't need to. Again, I'm all for, and I'm a big proponent of going to conferences. I'm a big proponent of going to networking events. I honestly don't know if going to a conference is going to help me if I'm still kind of struggling with something and I haven't figured out how to get there. Right? You and I have to stay focused on the goal until we get there. And oftentimes, we can't figure out what to fix until we keep working, until we keep testing, until we keep buying, until we can get it to work. Now, you and I have to keep thinking through this process on a daily basis. This is the most difficult part of the process, and where digital business owners give up. Right? This is where we give up. We got to keep focusing on this goal until we figure out what we make work. Now, you have to understand something about what we do. It's too easy and too cheap to find something else that, quote, works, whether or not it works is not even the point. Right? And this is what throws us. We say, you know what, this isn't working, but this other thing really must be working. I'm looking at all the testimonials. I'm looking at all the people I see in Facebook groups. They're making this work. Maybe, you know what, this is just stupid, man. I'm going to stop doing this. And typically, you probably right at the point of figuring out what you're going to need to do in order to make this method work. I suggest you not move on until you get it to work a little. Right? Even if you decide it's going to be too much, don't move on until you get the method to work for you. Now, if the amount of input is beyond your time capacity for a specific day, here's some things you can do. Number one, you can partner with somebody, right? Let's say that it's not working, but guess what? Partner up with somebody, right? Before you give it up, partner with somebody. Number two, before you give it up, hire somebody to help you with some of the stuff that's taking you too much time every day. Right? Again, or do both of them if necessary. Again, these are things that are I know that they're common sense, but they're hard because the easy thing to do is to glob on to something else. It's to move on to another method. And what happens to us is we are serial triers, right? Most people at this stage in digital marketing or digital business are beyond the you don't really have to tell people to take action. Most people I know take action. They do. Right? What people, and I find that most of us don't do a real good job of is we don't stick with something long enough until we struggle through making it work. And again, before you give up something, look to partner with somebody. Before you give up with something, get some help with some of the logistics if it's taking you too long, or do both of them. Right now, and here's where the discipline can help you. Please try not to move on to something else until you've consistently hit the goal. Right? Again, I know that's hard. I know that when business opportunities come along and they're so incredibly cheap now because of digital business, What's happening is, and what we're losing, and I don't have it here in my presentation, but I've talked about this here before, is what we're losing is opportunity, right? There's an opportunity cost to stopping what you're doing and moving on to something else. The opportunity cost is what you would have gotten if you would have stayed focused on your one thing before you moved on to something else and you started at the beginning of something else new. That's an opportunity cost. When you jump, right? When you stay on something until you can make it work, even if you decide once you've made it work, hey, you know what? This is not worth my time. Stay on it until you make it work a little. Now, now again, I want to say this again parenthetically, and I said this earlier, and I really do mean it. Until you're hitting your goal, you can't set I'm not going to spend any more than 2 hours on my digital business goal. You can't do that yet, right? Until you determine the inputs, you can't say, I'm only going to spend 15 minutes. I'm only going to spend 30 minutes. I'm only going to spend an hour. You have to kind of get get through this part until you figure out what the inputs need to be. Until you do that, you cannot effectively say that you're only going to spend a certain amount of time. Now, you may only have an hour to work on it, but that's fine. If you only got an hour to work on it, then that's what you got. You're going to have to spend that hour focused on the goal. But if you're spending that hour, 30 minutes on this thing, 20 minutes on a webinar, 15 minutes on something else, you can't do that. You got to spend your hour until you figure out what the inputs are going to be, right? And you cannot say, you cannot use this other line on yourself because it will cause you not to focus. Right now, once you determine, right, once you're getting that outcome, let's say that you have figured out, okay, I've got to do 9 videos every week, right? A little more than one a day. Let's say that's what you determine, right? That gets you to your 6 or 7 leads every day. Once you're doing that on a daily basis, here's what you do. You've got to then figure out how to hit the same goal with less time and less effort. You then figure out, can I then go buy software to do less of this? This is when you go buy software, folks. When you've already figured out what you want to do, it's already helping you to hit your goal. You then go start looking for software. This is when you buy it, not before this, right? Typically, what happens to us is we buy the software before we get to this point, and then we sort of then start this process of learning all over, and we're doing this thing over and over and over again, and we never get the place because we're going through the videos and tutorials and the chats and the groups and all the other things to get something to work, when really we've done things out of order, right? You don't go looking for the application until you are at the point where you figured out how to get to your outcome. And now what you're trying to do is you're trying to say, okay, how can I do this with less effort? What can I buy to help me right now? What can I hire in? Now, and this is just kind of another way of saying hire out. When I mean hire in, do you have somebody in your household, right? Do you have somebody in your family? Do you have a spouse? Do you have a nephew, a niece, a kid, somebody who you can ask to do some work, hopefully for free if necessary, right? Now, again, if you can pay them, you can pay them. But listen, if somebody is working towards something, you got a family business, and all this is going to be helping everybody in the house, listen, all hands on deck, right? Ask. At very minimum, ask. You might feel guilty about asking people, maybe asking your nieces, nephews, your kids to kind of help you do this, but that's fine. Give them a little bit, but listen, get their help, because not everything you're going to want to go and hire out. You need some people you can trust. You need some people you can lean on. You need some people that you can go and say, you know what, I realize it's going to take all night. I need your help on this. And then they're just going to work on it, whether or not you can pay them or not, right? And typically, you live with a spouse, your spouse is probably going to be right in there with you. What can they help you do? Please do not be afraid to ask. You know what I've found? That typically we don't like to ask our spouse because we're a little sheepish about, how we feel about working on this and it hasn't made anything yet. Listen, ask right now. What can I hire out? Now, again, once you've gone through that process, you've figured out what you can hire in. In other words, looking inside your team. Then start looking about what can you hire out to other people? What can you outsource? Who can you bring on to help you? Please don't do that though before you look inside. Right now, what can I trade out? This is where you partner with people. Right, again, once you're hitting your goal, you're trying to figure out how can I do this easier. Maybe you can do it with software. Maybe you can do some of it by getting somebody in your house to help you. Maybe you can do something by hiring some of it out. Maybe it's something you can trade out with a partnership. And once you're doing this, you can then scale up your goal. Right? It's really simple. Right? And again, I'm not talking about paid advertising here, but typically before you get to that paid advertising point, you're going to want to be at this point first because this is the labor part and this is the part you got to kind of really figure out. Once you've got to figure out the inputs, I believe, before you can start figuring out how you're gonna pay out. Because again, these costs are going to be the ones you're going to need to keep going, even if you can't do paid advertising right now. Once you're doing this part that I just talked about, you can focus. You can scale up your goal. In other words, you can say, you know what? Now I want 3,600 leads in a year. Right? Once you figure this part out. And then you can also focus on something else in your business when you can create more bandwidth for yourself by automation, by hiring it out, by hiring it in, by partnering, right? That's how you get more bandwidth. That's how you raise your goal. That's how you get more of it. That's how you continue to beat it. And that's how you continue to work through some of your limitations. For example, let's say then you're working on these videos. Now you can then start saying, okay, you know what? I'm getting my leads every day. Now I want to get better at converting those leads into sales, right? But you can't focus on that until you're hitting that goal. And you're not hitting that goal, then you're not going to even get to the point where you're ever working on conversion. And so most of us never get to this point because we never finish the first goal. Right now, any questions? Any questions on any of this? Any questions? Any questions? Okay, if this has been helpful for you, I'm going to ask you to give me a shout out here. If you would go to gainmindshare.info and you'll see the date here, 1/5/2019. If you go to that link, I will give you a PDF of the presentation, right? So if you just go and give us a shout out over there, we'll make sure you get the. And actually, I mean, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. It could be negative if you want. I appreciate if it's positive. I appreciate if it's not positive. Don't give it. But if it really was helpful, please go over to gamemindshare.info 1/5/2019 and give us a shout out, and then I'll give you access to a PDF of this presentation. Um, Also, just remember that the checklist PLR is still available. Tonight, I guess the price is going to go up. You can get that at theplrshow.com/start from scratch. We've got a special bonus over there of a course that we've done in the past. It's now retired. And then also, if you're working on getting your stuff set up, you can get into the PLR setup masterclass. We basically went over, I think, more than 2 hours of the setup process. And lastly, of course, you can pick up our business videos for 2018 on the plrshow.com/the series. If you are not get on our mailing list, you can sign up over there at the plrshow.com. We talk about PLR every day. So please sign up over there, put your name and email address in there. And we talk about PLR every day, pretty much business related, but we do kind of make sure we're talking about the same thing every day. I do all of my notifications in Facebook, right? You can pick that up at the facebook.com/groups/the PLR show. And of course, you're probably watching this on our training channel. And that's at youtube.com/gain mindshare. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. I'm giving the links too fast. Okay. Let's see. Okay. So let me go through this again. Okay. So if you, to get the PDF and to give us a shout out, that's at gainmindshare.info /1522019. Okay. And then the checklist PLR. The launch price expires tonight. You can pick that up at the plrshow.com/start from scratch. And I'll try to slow down. Uh, PLR Setup Masterclass. And this is the setup process. You can go over there at the plrshow.com/MC2. And this is kind of the thing that we do mainly so that you'll be able to set up your PLR, right? I know a lot of people that get offers, and we walk through the setup process so that you'll be able to either teach it to your outsourcer or something that you can do yourself. And then our business related videos for 2018, you get all of them in one set, right? Get out everything we did for 2018. And you can pick that up at plrshow.com/the series. Let me check and see if there are any questions over there. Okay, Jim saying, where can you get started from scratch? Jim, you may have it already, right? I'm almost guessing you might have it already. If you have the hackathon, you might have it already. So I'm guessing you do, right? So I know it's on the same page with the hackathon, right? Okay. Once again, please make sure you're signed up in our daily newsletter at the plrshow.com. In our groups at groups / the PLR show, and then our training channel at Gain Mindshare. Let's see. Jim's question is, you're thinking of using demo. What say you? Um, okay, I'm not sure what demo is. Is that a new application? Oh, okay. I haven't heard of it, Jim. I'll have to check it out. I have to check it out. I have not heard of it. Demo.com. I will check it out. I will check it out. All right. Any other questions? Okay, everybody. Well, thank you very much for being out here tonight. Sorry I was late again. I appreciate y'all being here. Have a great night and a pleasant tomorrow. Take care.